What if your address didn't exist? Not on Google Maps, not on a government record, not even on a delivery app. Your house? Technically illegal. Your street? Just sand. And your bomb shelter? A rusty car door propped against a sand dune. Welcome to the Bedouin villages of southern Israel, where survival isn't just a lifestyle, it's a daily gamble. Let's talk about a place where Wi-Fi is a fantasy, water is a luxury, and invisibility is policy. But don't worry, we'll keep it real, sharp, and maybe slightly sarcastic. Because how else do you talk about the absurd? Let's dive into facts about these unrecognized villages and why they're living proof that being a citizen doesn't always mean being seen. Imagine living in a place where rockets fall from the sky, and your biggest protection is an old rusty car half buried in the sand. Welcome to the Bedouin villages of southern Israel, where survival isn't a lifestyle, it's a daily gamble. And while just across the road, your neighbors relax in government-funded shelters, running water and Wi-Fi, your only lifeline is a shovel and hope. Now pause and think about that. Not in some ancient war zone, not a story from decades past, but today in 2025, this is the everyday reality for thousands of Bedouin families. We're talking about entire communities living in the shadow of a government that technically claims them, but systematically forgets them. You see, in this part of the Negev desert, two worlds live side by side. One world has reinforced concrete bunkers and emergency apps. The other? It has tents, tin roofs, and sirens that often don't bother to ring. This isn't just about politics. It's about survival, dignity, and a fundamental question. What does it mean to be a citizen when your own country acts like you don't exist? Today, we're peeling back the curtain on what the news rarely shows. A community forced to build a life out of scrap metal, solar panels, and sheer willpower. So buckle up, grab a strong cup of truth, and let's take a ride into the harsh reality that thousands of Bedouins face in a land that claims them, but doesn't protect them. Unrecognized, unprotected, and unwelcome. There are over 35 Bedouin villages scattered across the Negev desert, and not a single one of them is officially recognized by the Israeli government. You heard that right? Over 100,000 people live in communities that are treated like they don't even exist. No address, no zip code, no rights. These aren't pop-up squatters or fly-by-night campers. These are communities rooted in the desert for generations, long before anyone handed out building permits like candy. But here's the kicker. Because they're unrecognized, these villages aren't eligible for basic public services. We're talking no roads, no water, no electricity, no sewage systems. Forget Uber Eats or Amazon delivery in some places. Not even the ambulance will show up. And when it comes to building homes, they don't even try. Since the state doesn't legally acknowledge these villages, it won't issue building permits. So any attempt to build a house, a school, even a bathroom, is labeled illegal construction. And illegal means one thing: demolition. Imagine this. You spent months building a modest home for your family, cement by hand, roof from salvaged metal. Then one day, a bulldozer rolls in with an eviction order. No warning, no compensation, just dust and broken dreams. And it's not a one-time thing. According to human rights groups, hundreds of demolitions happen every year in these unrecognized Bedouin communities. Some families rebuild the same house 4, 5, 6 times only to watch it get flattened again. Now, let's be clear, these aren't refugees from another country. They are citizens of Israel born in the same land, under the same sky, but treated like ghosts in their own home. It's like the state gave them a passport, but forgot to add their village to the map. Junkyard shelters. And if being invisible to the system wasn't cruel enough, wait till you see what they've had to build just to stay alive. Because when rockets fall from the sky and the government doesn't give you a shelter, you don't wait for help. You dig, you weld, you improvise. Survival by scrap metal. Now picture this. Sirens wail across the Negev desert. Missiles incoming. You've got 15 seconds, sometimes less, to take cover. But what if there's nowhere to run? Unlike recognized Israeli towns where missile defense shelters are standard, these Bedouin villages? Nothing. No siren systems, no iron dome coverage, no underground bunkers, not even a basic concrete box. So what do? You become your own architect of survival. Here's where the grit and brilliance of these communities shine and break your heart at the same time. Locals scavenge old car doors, rusted shipping containers, oil barrels, and cement scraps to construct what can only be described as Frankenstein bomb shelters. Sometimes it's just a metal box buried halfway in sand. Other times, a sunken pit covered in wood planks. One family literally dug out a trench behind their goat pen and reinforced it with old refrigerator panels. It's survival engineering, on hard mode. No blueprints, no budget, just desperation meets determination. And don't get it twisted, these aren't quirky DIY projects. They're acts of necessity, built by people abandoned by the state and targeted by the sky. Some of these shelters leak when it rains, others collapse during sandstorms. And many are so small, entire families can't fit inside, so they take turns during attacks, choosing who hides and who stays exposed. Let that sink in. And the irony. These shelters aren't even legal. That's right. Because they're built without permits in unrecognized villages, the same bulldozers that destroy their homes can come for their bomb shelters too. Yeah. Imagine watching your one place of safety get demolished because it wasn't approved by a government that won't even recognize your existence. In any other place, this would make international headlines. So, if you're thinking, this has to be rock bottom, right? Hold on. Because when the government won't build you a school and you can't afford to send your kids to town, you don't cancel education. You create a classroom out of nothing but sand, sun, and stubborn hope. Let's talk about desert schools and the kids who walk miles barefoot just to learn the alphabet. Desert education hacks, the schools that shouldn't exist. All right, so imagine this. You're 8 years old. Your village doesn't have a school. There's no school bus coming. There's no road to walk on. And the government's official response? Basically, tough luck. So what do? Your parents gather old tents, leftover wood, torn tarps, cinder blocks, even car hoods, anything they can find, and build you a makeshift classroom in the desert. And I don't mean cute little outdoor learning session. I mean a fully bootstrapped DIY school, with one teacher, no chalkboard, no chairs, and a whole lot of hope. These are called unrecognized schools in unrecognized villages, which by government logic means they don't officially exist. But the kids are real. The lessons are real. The struggle? Too real. Here's where it gets even darker. Israeli law technically requires all children to attend school. But guess what? In these Bedouin villages, the government refuses to build schools, then punishes parents when their kids don't go to one. Yep, you heard that right. It's like being told to swim, and then getting your life jacket confiscated. Now, some children walk miles literally through sand dunes to the nearest town just to attend school, barefoot, in 100-degree heat, with wild dogs, and checkpoints, and soldiers with guns. And even then, those town schools often won't accept them. Why? Because the kids don't have a registered address. Because their village doesn't exist on the map. Because bureaucracy says, you don't count. So you end up with 9-year-olds who can't read, 13-year-olds who've never touched a computer, and teenagers forced into labor or marriage because their shot at an education was buried under politics. And remember, this isn't 1825. This is 2025. In a country with high-speed trains and AI startups. Meanwhile, some Bedouin kids are still learning the alphabet under a tree. But wait, it gets worse. Sometimes when families or activists actually raise money to build a modest school, say, 2 rooms, maybe a toilet if they're lucky, the Israeli government shows up with demolition orders. Why? No permits, no zoning approval, illegal construction. So just like their homes and bomb shelters, these desert classrooms are bulldozed too, destroyed, wiped clean as if hope was a code violation. And yet, these communities rebuild over and over again. Because when your kid is sitting in the dirt with a stick for a pencil and a tire rim for a desk, you're not just teaching them math. You're teaching them defiance. Water wars in the desert. So after surviving bombs and beating the odds just to learn the ABCs, you'd think at least a glass of water would come easy. Yeah, think again. Because in a land where desalination is a national superpower, some Bedouin villages still rely on donkeys to fetch water. Let's talk about what it takes to stay hydrated, when even the pipes ignore you. Water wars in the desert, the tap that never turns on. Here's the setup. You live in the Negev desert, one of the hottest places in the country, with temperatures regularly hitting 40 degrees Celsius. That's 104 degrees Fahrenheit for our Fahrenheit folks. But your village? Not officially recognized. And that means no water pipes, no taps, no infrastructure. You are literally surrounded by underground water lines that serve nearby Israeli towns, farms, and even greenhouses. But none of them connect to your home. It's like standing next to a buffet, starving and being told you're not on the guest list. So how do Bedouin families survive? They've turned water collection into a full-time job. Every few days, residents will drive their old, beat-up pickup trucks to the nearest authorized water station, often 10 to 15 kilometers away, where they fill plastic containers, barrels, or metal tanks with just enough water to get by. Let's pause on that for a second. Because it's not just inconvenient, it's expensive. These families pay double or triple the price per liter compared to the average Israeli household, just because they're hauling their own water in unregulated, unsanitary conditions. And when the truck breaks down or the road's blocked, that's it, no water. Families go days without drinking water. Cattle die. People bathe once a week if they're lucky. Cooking becomes a challenge. Washing clothes, a luxury. Meanwhile, Less than 2 kilometers away, there are Israeli settlements with private swimming pools, sprinkler systems, and automatic car washes. Let that sink in. They're watering grass. The Bedouins are rationing sips. And during heat waves, which are becoming more common, thanks to climate change, some Bedouin children literally pass out from dehydration. Elderly people collapse. There's no emergency water delivery, no government aid, no hotline to call. But here's where the real kicker comes in. It's not that Israel can't supply them water. It's that they won't unless the villages relocate to officially sanctioned areas. So in effect, water becomes a weapon, a bargaining chip in a political game. Move to the cities we build for you, and we'll turn the tap on. Stay here in your ancestral land, and stay thirsty. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's been said publicly by government officials over the years. And yet, these people stay. Why? Because this isn't just about water. It's about dignity, land, history, identity. Moving into government-built townships would mean giving up their traditional way of life, herding, farming, community autonomy, and becoming invisible in a new way. So they resist. And you know what that resistance looks like. Collecting rainwater in buckets, digging wells by hand, rationing showers to once a week, boiling water for kids with solar panels strapped to broken strollers. They survive not because they're allowed to, but because they refuse not to. Bulldozers and broken promises. And just when you think the story couldn't get any more dystopian, picture this. You've built your own home, sourced your own water, even managed to educate your children under a tree. Then, out of nowhere, a government bulldozer rolls in and flattens everything. Let's talk about the demolition dilemma that's haunting every Bedouin sunrise. Bulldozers and broken promises. The demolition dilemma. Imagine building your home, brick by brick, with your own hands, because no bank will give you a loan and no government office will approve a building permit. You're not doing this to flip it on Airbnb. You're building it because it's the only way your family can have a roof over their heads. Now imagine that home gone in 10 minutes. That's the daily reality for Bedouin families in unrecognized villages across southern Israel. The Israeli Land Authority, sometimes accompanied by police, routinely demolishes structures in these communities, citing the homes as illegal because they weren't built with permits. But here's the insane twist. You can't get a permit in the first place because your village doesn't exist on paper. It's like being ticketed for driving without a license, when the DMV won't even let you apply. We're talking about dozens of demolitions every month. Not just homes, but schools, mosques, livestock shelters, solar panels, even water tanks. Gone. Erased like a typo. And here's the part that burns even more. These demolitions are carried out not to make way for development, but to pressure residents into relocating to government-planned towns, where they'll lose their land, livestock, and independence. To the outside world, it's framed as urban integration. In reality, it's cultural erasure wrapped in bulldozer tracks. Take the village of Al-Arakib, for example. It's been demolished more than 200 times. That's not a typo. 200 times. Each time, the families rebuild. They plant new tents, erect makeshift homes. And each time, the state rolls in and knocks them down again. Al-Araqib is less of a village now and more of a living act of resistance. A patch of defiance in a land that's trying to erase them. Even their cemetery. Yes, the cemetery was declared illegal at one point. Imagine burying your grandfather in the same land his grandfather was buried and having to defend that land in court. The legal system? No help either. Bedouin families are often fined for trespassing on land that's been in their families for generations. If they try to fight the demolitions legally, the cases drag on for years, costing money they don't have and time they can't afford. Meanwhile, Israeli settlements just kilometers away are expanding fast. With full infrastructure, electricity, water, schools, security, even tax breaks. But if you're a Bedouin, you build your own shelter, it's illegal. You build your own school, it's a threat. You build your own life, it's a target. And still, they rebuild. Every time. Not because they have hope in the system, but because they have no other choice. To stay on the land is to resist with presence. To rebuild is to say, I exist, I belong, I will not vanish. Schools without classrooms. And if you think bulldozing homes is harsh, wait till you hear what happens when kids try to learn the alphabet. Because in these villages, education isn't just underfunded, it's under siege. Let's walk into the wild world of desert education, where classrooms are sometimes just a tree and a whiteboard, if they're lucky. Schools without classrooms. Okay. So you've survived demolition round 56. Your home? Gone. But you've rebuilt again. Now picture your kid, clutching a tattered notebook, ready to learn something, anything. Except there's no school, no building, no chalkboard, no Wi-Fi. Just desert wind and a stubborn dream. Because in these villages, education is a battleground. Without classrooms, learning in the dust. Let's break it down. There are over 35 unrecognized Bedouin villages in southern Israel. Guess how many of those have government-built schools? Go ahead, guess. You might think, maybe 15, 10, surely at least a few. Try 0, not 1. If your village isn't officially recognized, your kids are basically invisible to the Ministry of Education. No schools, no teachers, no buses, no plan. And remember, we're not talking about a remote Amazon tribe here. We're talking about children living within Israel, a country ranked as one of the most technologically advanced in the world. Kids in Tel Aviv are learning to code at age 7. Meanwhile, Bedouin kids are walking miles just to sit under a tent and learn how to write their names. Literally. Some villages have set up makeshift classrooms out of tin shacks, leftover tents, or under trees with bed sheets for shade. One village built its own elementary school, using whatever materials they could find. Cinder blocks, wood planks, salvaged scraps. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. Until the government showed up. Not to help, but to demolish it. Yep, the same bulldozers that tear down homes. They take down schools, too. The official reason? You didn't have a permit. Same old playbook. Spoiler alert. They can't get a permit because the village doesn't exist on the map. It's like telling someone to show up for a job interview, but refusing to tell them where the building is. So what do the kids do? Some walk miles to schools in recognized towns through the blazing desert heat with no transportation. Others just drop out. And this is where the cycle deepens. Without access to basic education, Bedouin children are locked into poverty before they even have a shot. No literacy, no job options. No diploma, no voice in the system. No education, no future. Let that sink in. Kids who want to learn are being structurally denied the right to try. Meanwhile, Israeli settlements nearby enjoy fully funded schools, science labs, after-school robotics, air-conditioned classrooms, and free buses that pull up at their front doors. The contrast? Blinding. And it's not just infrastructure. It's cultural erasure. When Bedouin families try to teach their own history, their own language, or even traditional skills, they're told it's unauthorized curriculum. So now they're not just denied education, they're denied their identity. It's hard enough to teach a child how to read. Imagine trying to teach them they have a place in the world, when the world keeps erasing the place they call home. Health clinics? Try camel rides and prayers. And if you think the education system is brutal, wait until someone gets sick. Because in Bedouin villages, health care access is less like a human right and more like a desert mirage. Let's talk about how these communities handle emergencies with no ambulances, no clinics, and no time to spare. Okay, so your house has no address. Your school got bulldozed. But now someone in your family, your child, your grandma, your pregnant wife starts running a fever, or worse. You pick up the phone. Only there's no signal. You try to drive, but there's no road. You think of calling an ambulance, but guess what? They don't come here. Healthcare in the shadows, where distance can kill you faster than disease. In the unrecognized Bedouin villages of southern Israel, access to basic healthcare isn't limited, it's practically non-existent. There are no hospitals, no clinics, no urgent care, and definitely no ambulances on standby. Why? Same reason as always. These villages are not recognized by the government. So in the official books, these people don't live there. And if you don't exist on paper, neither do your needs. Here's what that means in real life. Imagine your child gets bitten by a snake. Or your elderly parent collapses from heat stroke. Or a woman goes into labor in the middle of the night. There is nowhere nearby to go. Not even a pharmacy. You have two options. Drive yourself to the nearest town, sometimes 15 to 40 kilometers away, on unpaved roads that look like moon craters. Wait and pray literally, and hope nothing goes wrong before sunrise. And here's the kicker. Even if you make it out, you're not guaranteed help. Many public hospitals are overwhelmed, underfunded, or simply don't prioritize patients from unauthorized settlements. Meanwhile, in nearby recognized towns and settlements, clean, well-equipped hospitals, air-conditioned waiting rooms, ambulances that show up in 5 minutes or less, prenatal care, pediatricians, mental health support. So how do Bedouin villagers survive? They improvise. They rely on traditional herbal medicine, tribal remedies, and midwives who learned by doing, not diplomas. In one case, a woman in an unrecognized village gave birth in the back of a pickup truck, bouncing over gravel roads for an hour, because that was the only ambulance available. And you know what's wild? There's no shortage of money to build state-of-the-art clinics in Israel. Just not there. Not in the villages. Because to build a clinic, you'd need government approval. To get approval, your village has to be recognized. To be recognized, the village must be mapped. And for some reason, no one can find the map. It's not just negligence, it's systemic design. This isn't about bad luck. It's about policy. A strategy that keeps communities trapped in a cycle of neglect by design. And every illness, every preventable death, every mother forced to deliver her baby in a tent is a symptom of that system. And the consequences. They ripple. Children grow up malnourished because no one diagnosed the digestive condition. Mental illness goes untreated, leading to generational trauma. Infectious diseases spread faster in areas with no clean water, no health education, no oversight. All while the broader population lives in one of the most medically advanced regions in the Middle East. Let that contrast land for a second. This isn't just inequality. It's a case study in how to erase people without ever firing a bullet. Roads to nowhere, literally. And just when you thought it couldn't get more absurd, let's talk about roads. Because while cities are getting smart highways and bullet trains, Bedouin villages? They're lucky if they don't get swallowed by a pothole the size of a minivan. Time to dig into the transportation black hole that makes survival a logistical nightmare. No electricity, no water, no health care. You'd think the government would at least throw in a road or two, right? I mean, we're not asking for the Autobahn, just a strip of asphalt, a few meters of gravel. Heck, even a decent dirt path would do. But nope. Because now we enter what I like to call the Bedouin Bermuda Triangle, where roads go to die. Paved roads. Sorry, only if you exist on Google Maps. In most modern countries, roads are basic infrastructure. They connect humans to opportunity. In southern Israel's unrecognized Bedouin villages, they connect dreams to dust. Let's break it down. There are over 35 Bedouin villages in the Negev desert that the Israeli government refuses to legally recognize. As a result, none of them are included in national infrastructure plans. That means no road construction, no road maintenance, no public transport. So what do people do? They drive if they're lucky enough to own a car across rocky, broken terrain that even mountain goats would think twice about. We're talking jagged paths that flood during winter. Scorching hot sand trails in summer that can blow out tires. And just to make it spicy, no street lights, zero signage, nada. Now imagine being a child in one of these villages, walking to school if there even is one, in the dark. Imagine an emergency at night. You're in labor, someone's choking. You need to reach help fast. But you can't even find the road, because there is no road. Just dust, rocks, and government indifference. But here's the real gut punch. It's not like there's no road building happening in the region. Right next door, literally across the fence, Jewish settlements built in the Negev enjoy. Freshly paved roads, clear signage, public transport lines, government-funded highways. These are communities built after many of the Bedouin villages. But they get all the perks. Why? Because they're recognized. Because they fit the zoning plans. Because their existence is wanted. The contrast is almost cartoonishly cruel. You have state-of-the-art highways leading to brand new suburban homes. Then, a few hundred meters away, a village with no address, no legal recognition, and a goat path for a main street. The message couldn't be louder. You don't belong here. And it gets worse. When Bedouins try to fix their own roads, pooling community funds, organizing local construction, the government has, in multiple cases, sent in bulldozers to tear them down. Why? Because unauthorized road construction is illegal. Let that irony sit for a second. You're denied public infrastructure. You try to build it yourself. And then you get punished for it. It's like being refused a seat at a restaurant, then slapped for bringing your own food. One real-life example. In the village of Al-Arakib, bulldozed over 200 times, the residents tried to smooth out a small path to make it safer for children walking to school. A week later, the army rolled in and flattened it again. No roads, no mercy. The classroom without walls. But the wildest thing, kids still try to go to school through this mess. Let's move into the next brutal reality. What education looks like when your classroom might be a tent, a tree, or a distant dream. Strap in, this one's going to hit hard. The classroom without walls. Okay, so your village has no electricity, no roads, no legal existence. But hey, let's educate the kids, right? Right. Wrong. Because welcome to the school of nowhere, where the curriculum includes surviving 40 degrees Celsius heat without shade, dodging bulldozers on the way to class, and graduating with honors in being ignored. Education in the desert, where classrooms are optional and dreams are disposable. Let's start with the basics. Education is a human right, yes? In Israel, it's even mandatory by law until age 18. But for the Bedouin children living in unrecognized villages of the Negev, education is less of a right and more of a government shrug. Here's how bad it is. Out of the 35-plus unrecognized Bedouin villages in southern Israel, many have 0 schools. Not low-quality schools, not underfunded schools. Literally no school buildings at all. If you want your child to learn the ABCs or 1, 2, 3s, you've got to figure it out yourself. Some kids walk for kilometers every single day across unpaved terrain just to get to the nearest school in a recognized town. Rain, heat, wind, dust storms. No buses, no sidewalks, no lunchboxes. Just determination and a pair of old sandals. Others, they don't go at all. Because their parents are scared. Scared of detentions by authorities for trespassing into other towns, harassment from settlement security, or worse, having their kids targeted just for showing up somewhere they're not supposed to be. The numbers are staggering. More than 5,000 Bedouin children live in unrecognized villages without access to a local school. Dropout rates among Bedouin teens are as high as 40% in some areas. Less than 10% of Bedouin students go on to higher education. That's not just a crisis. That's a deliberate intellectual starvation. We're talking about a generation growing up with limited literacy, no access to modern tools, and a growing sense that the system doesn't care whether they succeed or even survive. And here's the kicker. Even when villages petition for schools, they're told, you're not part of the zoning plan. Translation: you don't officially exist, so your kids don't officially matter. What do parents do? They improvise. Some set up makeshift classrooms, tents with blackboards. Volunteers come in, retired teachers, activists. You know, people with hearts bigger than their budgets. But you can't teach physics when the wind blows your lesson plans away. You can't run a science lab when the only running thing is goats. And you can't build a better future if the government bulldozes your learning center every time you try. In one village, Wadi al-Na'am parents literally built a school out of scrap metal and plywood. No electricity, no running water, just a desperate attempt to give kids something. How did the state respond? You guessed it, demolition orders. Because illegal structures apparently include kindergartens for 5-year-olds. But here's the irony of ironies. The Israeli state actively recruits Bedouins into the military. They trust them with guns, tanks, and national security, but won't build them a basic classroom. It's like saying, "Hey kid, don't bother learning math, just learn how to shoot." Pause. Zoom in. Feel this. Picture this. A 10-year-old girl named Amina walks 5 kilometers a day, barefoot, just to learn how to read. She writes her homework by candlelight because her home has no electricity. She gets harassed on the road. And every time she hears a bulldozer, she wonders if it's coming to tear down her village or her dream. She's not lazy. She's not unmotivated. She's just born invisible in the eyes of a system that doesn't want her to succeed. And yet, she keeps walking. Because education is hope. And hope doesn't die easy. We've walked the dust roads. We've stood in the classroom that doesn't exist. But now let's dive into something even more essential than books or blackboards. Water. Because if you thought education was scarce, wait till you see what Bedouins go through just to take a sip. Hydration? That's a luxury in this game of survival. What are you waiting for? You've got no legal address, no electricity, no school. But at least you have water, right? Wrong again. Because for the Bedouins living in unrecognized villages in Israel's Negev desert, water isn't a tap, it's a battle. The desert paradox, where water is all around, but you still die of thirst. Imagine this. You live in one of the hottest regions in Israel, the Negev, a literal desert. Daytime temperatures regularly climb past 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The air burns, the sun scalds, and your lips crack before you've even had breakfast. Now imagine walking out of your shack made of scrap metal and tarp and seeing a water pipe. A clean, modern, government-installed pipeline running right past your village, so close you could hear the water rushing inside. But there's a catch. You're not allowed to use it because your village doesn't officially exist. How do you get water then? Short answer, you haul it like a medieval villager in plastic tanks on the back of rusty trucks, sometimes from 10, 20, even 30 kilometers away. You drive if you're lucky enough to own a truck. You wait in line at public taps in neighboring towns. Then you pay 3 to 5 times more per liter than your average Israeli citizen. That's right, the poorest communities in the country pay the most for water. And the quality, let's not even go there. Sometimes it's contaminated. Sometimes it's stagnant. Sometimes it just runs out, and you're stuck rationing water between your children and your livestock. Shower or cook, drink or clean, you choose. Real numbers, real pain. Over 80,000 Bedouins in unrecognized villages lack access to piped water. The World Health Organization recommends 50 liters of water per person per day. In some Bedouin homes, they survive on less than 20 liters. Waterborne diseases and sanitation issues are widespread, especially among kids. And just when you think it can't get worse, Israel's law enforcement sometimes cuts off the tanks. Yep. If you try to illegally connect to a pipeline, boom, bulldozers. If you build your own well without permission, demolition order. If you're caught transporting too much water from nearby towns, fines, confiscation, police intimidation. It's not just denial of service. It's weaponization of survival. Here's the cruel irony. Israel is a global leader in water tech. Desalination plants, drip irrigation, AI-controlled farming. They make water out of thin air in some places. Yet, for the Bedouins of the Negev, water is still a privilege, not a right. Imagine being a child who's never seen a working faucet, never flushed a toilet, never stood under a real shower. Instead, your bathroom is a pit. Your sink is a bucket. And your family decides who gets to bathe this week and who waits till next. Zoom in. Feel this. A mother named Layla wakes up before dawn. She loads empty jerry cans into the back of a borrowed pickup truck. Her baby cries, not from hunger, but from heat. The thermometer reads 43 degrees Celsius, and it's only 9 a.m. Layla drives 15 kilometers just to fill 200 liters of water. It will last her family 5 days, maybe. There's no air conditioning back home. No fridge to keep the water cold. No running taps for washing hands. So she boils what little she can, cools it in the shade, and prays the kids don't get sick again. She's not lazy. She's not backward. She's just caught in a system that denies her humanity one drop at a time. But here's what blows minds globally. According to Israeli law, the state is obligated to provide water to all its residents, regardless of legal status. So what gives? Planning policy. Oh. Because unrecognized villages weren't approved under master plans, they're ineligible for water infrastructure. Translation: you're not on our map, so you're not our problem. The impact is brutal. Women and girls miss school to fetch water. Entire families live in chronic dehydration. Children die from treatable infections linked to poor hygiene. Dreams die in the dust. Slow, quiet, invisible deaths. Water isn't just a human right here. It's a political weapon. And Bedouins are caught on the wrong end of the barrel. We've talked about houses that vanish overnight, schools that don't exist, and water that flows for everyone except those born behind invisible borders. So what now? Stay tuned, because this isn't just a story of suffering. It's also one of resistance. And in the next section, we're diving into the unexpected warriors, the women, the youth, the lawyers, the poets who refuse to be erased. The people you don't see. They're not on tourist maps. They don't show up in Tel Aviv brochures. You won't find their villages on Google Maps. And yet, they're there. Flesh and blood, dreams and dust. The Bedouins of the Negev aren't just statistics. They're not relics of the past. They're real people living, breathing, raising kids, telling stories, burying their dead, all while being denied the most basic things. A roof, a road, a right to exist. We've seen houses demolished without warning, classrooms that never got built, children growing up in makeshift homes with no electricity, no water, no future written for them unless they write it themselves. And they are. Despite the system, despite the silence, despite the odds. Young Bedouins are fighting back with cameras, petitions, protests, court cases, and voices louder than bulldozers. This isn't just about the Bedouins. This is about every community erased because they didn't fit the blueprint. Every voice muted by bureaucracy. Every child told they weren't planned for. So the question isn't, why haven't they moved? It's, why haven't we seen them? Why haven't we listened? Because if a village can be wiped off a map like a typo, what else are we pretending doesn't exist? If this story shook you, good. It should. But don't just scroll past. Don't let this become another forgotten tab in your browser history. Like this video if you believe access to water, education, and safety should never be negotiable. Comment below, even if it's just as so this gets pushed to more people. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because we're not done. There are more stories like this hidden, buried, silenced. And on this channel, we dig them up. We give the mic to the unheard. We shed light on what others would rather keep in the dark. We expose systems, uplift voices, and challenge silence with truth. More voices. More resistance. More truth you won't find on the 9 o'clock news. So if you're here for more than just content, if you're here to feel, to learn, and to do something, welcome to the movement. This is more than a documentary. It's a digital rebellion, and it starts with you. Stay awake, stay loud, stay human, and we'll see you in the next story. Subscribe now.